Well, I am showing actually 4 o'clock on the nose here this afternoon. And so if we're all set, I'm going to go ahead and get started with my Ranger talk here. Again, my name is Ranger Brian, and the title of my talk is, Let's Have a Toast to the Man of Steel. We're going to be talking about William Gladstone Steel, who's considered to be the founding father for Crater Lake National Park, also the first man to do research on the lake here, our first concessionaire for Crater Lake National Park, and also the second superintendent here. But before I go any further, giving you his life history or showing you any pictures of William Gladstone Steel, I thought I would start off with an inaccurate historical reenactment. That's something that William Gladstone Steel did to help make this a national park. So picture this. The year is 1888, and William Gladstone Steel went to the headwaters of the Rogue River, about 40 miles from us here, and he gathered up about 600 baby rainbow trout, 600 rainbow trout fingerlings, and he put them in a large milk bucket. And he was going to carry the fish by foot, or actually he was going to carry the fish in a horse-drawn wagon, but there was too much sloshing. So he then decided to carry the fish by foot 40 miles up to the rim of Crater Lake. Can you imagine what was going through his mind as he was doing this? I know what's going through my mind right now. I'd be thinking, boy, are these buckets heavy. But I still have 40 more miles to go. Oh my, are these buckets heavy. Boy, I wish somebody would carry these buckets for me. But I guess it's going to be up to me. Oh wow. And my back is killing me. And I still have 38 more miles to go. Oh wow, is this hard. But think of this. If I can get these fish in Crater Lake, maybe fishermen will join me in the efforts to make this a national park. But until then, my back is still killing me. Well, you guys get the idea. He carried these fish up to the rim, and in a sense, that was the easy part. There was no trail down a lake surface here in 1888, so he then had to carry these fish by foot down a lake shore on these unstable rock ledges here, and he was successfully able to plant 37 fish into Crater Lake. Now, what were you thinking as I was carrying these buckets? Besides, boy, is that ranger crazy. Well, the reason why I was carrying these buckets here, expending all that energy, was to demonstrate just a small fraction of energy that William Gladstone Steel took to make this a national park so we can enjoy this beautiful view from the back porch of the Crater Lake Lodge here today. And planting fish in Crater Lake was a success. The Park Service continued this tradition until about 1941, and today we've got 2 different species of fish living in Crater Lake. And because of William Gladstone Steel, Crater Lake is now a fun place for fishermen. Since the fish are exotic, you don't need a fishing license. There's no size limit, number limit, catch limit. You can catch fish to your heart's content, and we encourage you to take them home with you. But William Gladstone Steel is so much more than just the fish god. He's considered to be the founding father of Crater Lake National Park. Well, who is this guy? Well, I've got some pictures of him with me here today. Isn't he a handsome man, ladies? At least our park curator thought so as she was putting together these pictures for me. Well, William Gladstone Steel was born in Stratford, Ohio in 1854. And as a schoolboy in Kansas in 1870, he claims he read a newspaper article about this beautiful lake in southern Oregon mountains called Crater Lake. And this newspaper was wrapped in his lunch. And so he made a mental note that someday as an adult, he was going to visit Crater Lake. Well, in 1872, his parents moved to Portland, Oregon. And finally, in 1885, he was able to venture to Crater Lake. He saw it from around this area here, around this area where Rim Village is located here today, on August 15th of 1885. And this is what he looked like here in 1885 when he saw Crater Lake for the first time. And this is how he described seeing Crater Lake for the first time. He said, quote, "Not a foot of land about the lake had been touched or claimed. An overmastering conviction came to me that this wonderful spot must be saved, wild and beautiful, just as it was for future generations. And it was up to me to do something. How, I did not know, but the idea of a national park appealed to me." Well, after William Gladstone Steele saw Crater Lake for the first time, it literally changed his life. When he went back up to Portland, Oregon, he started a petition drive. He got hundreds of signatures from friends, associates, anyone he could find to start a campaign to make Crater Lake a national park. And on top of that, he wrote close to 1,000 letters nationwide to basically every major magazine and newspaper in the country, trying to proclaim that Crater Lake should be a national park. And on top of that, he wrote every single member of Congress a letter, trying to lobby them to make this a national park. But none of these efforts were enough. William Gladstone Steele then had to make numerous trips to Washington, D.C. to personally lobby senators and congressmen to make this a national park. And he became such a fixture at the Capitol that senators and congressmen would duck around doors and hallways whenever they saw William Gladstone Steele. They thought of William Gladstone Steele as a pest and a crackpot. And they probably even told at one point, they said, "Will Steele, go home. Give it up. We are not going to turn your little lake into a national park." But William Gladstone Steele would not give it up. He even said at one point, he said, quote, "I got licked so often that I learned to like it." Well, after 17 years of having a force of will and a persistent determination, Congress had no choice but to get into William Gladstone Steele to get him off their backs. And on May 22nd of 1902, Congress passed a law making Crater Lake into a national park, and it was signed into law by President Theodore Roosevelt. And so today, Crater Lake National Park is 105 years old. We're the 5th oldest national park here in the United States. So William Gladstone Steele, that's quite a success story, isn't it? From first seeing it, he made this a national park. But it also took 17 years of his life for his dream to come true. 17 years, that's a long time, isn't it? It's about the same amount of time it takes to raise a child from when they're born, from about the time they're ready to graduate from high school. So 17 years, what does that say right there? That says right there that one person, any one of us here today can make a difference. It also says never give up on your dreams, no matter how crazy they may be. It also says it may take an incredible amount of persistence and determination and hearing a lot of no's for your dream to come true. Well, that'd be a great story in itself, but William Gladstone Steele is so much more than just the fish guy and the founding father of Crater Lake National Park. He was also the first person to do research, to fund research on this lake here. During that 17 years he was trying to make this a national park, in 1886, he actually had funding from the U.S. Geological Survey to try to determine the depth of Crater Lake. Now the high-tech equipment in 1886 to determine depth was a lead pipe, a piano wire, and a hand crank. And he attained this equipment from Portland, and he had 3 boats built up there too to survey the bottom of Crater Lake. And he had all this equipment shipped by rail from Portland down to Ashland, and then they had to use horse-drawn wagons to get this equipment up to Crater Lake. And just right after they left Ashland and Phoenix, Oregon, they were actually, the surveying party led by Will Steele was actually heckled by a teenage boy. That teenage boy told Will Steele, he said, "I don't know who built your boats, but they probably have never seen a body of water before. Your boats will not be seaworthy on Crater Lake." But William Gladstone Steele was not one to listen to his critics. So he thought about what that little boy said, and this is what he wrote in his journal afterwards. He said, quote, "This brings to mind the fact that a critic is a person who finds fault with something of which he is densely ignorant." So keep that in mind, folks, next time somebody makes fun of you or tells you your dreams can't come true. They're nothing more than a critic. And a critic is no more than a person who finds fault with something of which he is densely ignorant. Well, it took over a week on those poor trails at the time, and they got the boats up to the rim around Rim Village. And that, in a sense, was the easy part, because they had to get the boats from the rim to the lakeshore. It's about 1,000 feet down here. So what they do, they had to use ropes and pulleys to slide the boats downhill. And as they were sliding the boats, it was causing rock slides. Rocks were bouncing around their head, bouncing around the boats here. But the boats made it safely to the shoreline, and the boats were seaworthy. And they were able to do, using that lead pipe and piano wire and hand crank, 168 soundings to determine the depth. And they determined in 1886 that Crater Lake was 1,996 feet deep. It was the deepest lake in the United States. We knew that as early as 1886 here. Now, 1,996 feet deep sounds a little off, doesn't it? Because in 2001 we used advanced sonar, and we now know the lake is 1,943 feet deep. So Will Steele and his party were about 53 feet off, which sounds like a lot, but if you do the math, they were only about 3% off. And so they knew in 1886 this was the deepest lake in the United States, and also at those soundings, they knew that there were some underwater cones, volcanic cones out here too. So with these measurements, they could also more persuasively tell Congress that this should be made a national park. It's the deepest lake, and about definitely a series of volcanoes here. But well, not only is William Gladstone Steele the fish guy and the founding father of Crater Lake National Park, and the first person to do research, he is also the first concessionaire here too. Now in 1902, after this became a national park, William Gladstone Steele was hoping to become the first park superintendent here. After all, he figured he'd spent 17 years of his life, blood, sweat, and tears trying to make this a national park. So he figured he was a logical choice. Doesn't that sound right for him to become the first superintendent? Yeah. But again, many members of Congress didn't like William Gladstone Steele. They thought he was a pest, a crackpot, and a zealot. So they were very happy to turn down his request. Well, understandably, William Gladstone Steele was very disappointed, but he was not going to be denied, though, increasing the enjoyment of Crater Lake for himself or all of us here today. In 1907, he formed the first concessionaire here. And that year, he actually started the camping here in the park. Is anybody camping at Mazama Village by any chance? We started the camping in that area in 1907. Now back then, it was located roughly where it's at here today, and it was referred to as the Anna Springs Campground. Now besides the camping, he also started the boat tours here. Has anybody ever taken a boat tour on Crater Lake or was thinking about it? That was also started by William Gladstone Steele. It was right around this area. In 1907, you take a trail from this area down to Lake Shore, and then you take a rowboat out to Wizard Island. And besides the boat tours and the camping, he also started something else. Has anybody ever been to the Crater Lake Lodge? Yeah, all of us have, 'cause that's where we're at here. Well, in 1909, William Gladstone still actually got funding from friends to help start building this building. The original Crater Lake Lodge was constructed between 1909 and 1915 here. Many of it with his own money here too, as well as funding from friends. Here's another picture of William Gladstone Steel. This is how he described his efforts. He said, quote, "All the money I have is in the park, and if I had more, it would go there too. This is my life's work, making Crater Lake accessible for folks." Because what good is scenery if you cannot enjoy it fully? So in a sense, with fish to catch, boat tours, and these comfortable rocking chairs, William Gladstone Steel would want us to have a completely fulfilling visit to Crater Lake. It's as if he personally invited all of us here today with the rocking chairs, a nice place to have dinner, a comfortable bed to sleep in here tonight, the campground here. And besides all that, he also did one more thing here to help make this a national park. Did anybody drive up to Crater Lake from the outside? Yeah, all of us did, unless you came in by helicopter or parachute. Well, he knew none of us would come up here without a good road system. And in 1907, if you wanted to come up to Crater Lake from Klamath Falls or Medford, it could take you up to between 3 to 5 days to get up here by horseback on those very poor trails 100 years ago. Well, in 1909, he actually pushed through Congress to have road surveying done, more modern roads built to come up here. And he also dreamed up a circular drive to go around Crater Lake, so we can enjoy the view of the lake from many different angles here. So the original rim road, which he got federal funding for, was constructed between 1913 and 1916, and it was later on replaced by the more modern rim drive here. So in a sense, with the road system, the boat tours, these rocking chairs, the lodge here, William Gladstone Steel would want us to be able to admire and appreciate Crater Lake just as he admired and loved Crater Lake 100 years ago. Well, I don't want to give you guys the impression that William Gladstone Steel is a saint, because he is not. He is human, just like all of us here today. And during those years when he was the concessionaire, he wasn't satisfied with just being the concessionaire and the park founder. He was determined to become the superintendent here. So he did everything he could to become superintendent, even starting false rumors how bad the first superintendent was, William Arent. Now history shows that William Arent was a decent superintendent, but William Gladstone Steel actually used his connections in Washington, D.C. to have William Arent removed. Now William Arent knew what was going on. He knew why he was being pushed, and he refused to leave. Did anybody here drive in from the south entrance? Do you remember driving by a picnic area called the Goodbye Picnic Area? Well, that is literally the spot where the U.S. Marshals escorted out William Arent, our first superintendent. So they said goodbye to William Arent and said hello to our second superintendent, William Gladstone Steel. And so he was superintendent here between 1913 and 1916. During those 3 years, he was working hard to improve the road system as well as the visitor services here. But as we all know, unfortunately in life, what comes around goes around. In 1916, a new organization started called the National Park Service. And the first director, Stephen Mather, he wanted park superintendents that would be loyal to him and the National Park Service mission. He didn't want founding fathers with too independent of an idea as running national parks here. So he did what he could to push out William Gladstone Steel. But he did it in a more gentle manner. What he did is he offered him what's called the park commissioner job. He'd be the presiding federal judge here at Crater Lake, hearing the court cases here. So from 1916 to the end of his life, he was basically the magistrate here at Crater Lake. Now, pretty much the most serious court case he heard in those years were some people throwing rocks over the edge on the trail, people underneath them. So that was pretty much the most serious court case here at the time. But he now had a way to support himself for the rest of his life here. And William Gladstone Steele, in his retirement years, in a sense, he felt like he accomplished a lot. Looking back at all he did with constructing the lodge here, making Crater Lake a national park, putting together the boat tours, the camping. He said at one point, he said, quote, "I set out what I accomplished to do, and I'm now happy." But at the same time he felt like he did so much for Crater Lake, he felt kind of wounded towards the end of his life. And let me show you some pictures to kind of demonstrate that. Remember that picture I showed you at the beginning of my talk, that dashing young man? Well, as you notice, as he gets up in years, William Gladstone Steele starts to look more stern and serious and even sad here as he gets up in years. As he was getting up in years, he felt like he still had a lot of ideas for Crater Lake here. In 1916, his friend Williams Jennings Bryan stayed at the lodge here, and he told Will Steele, he said, you know, if you're going to do boat tours, you need to have an elevator that goes from here to the lake shore. And if anybody's ever taken a boat tour, doesn't that sound like a great idea? And so William Gladstone Steele, he mentioned this in the National Park Service of building an elevator to Lake Shore, and the Park Service said no. When they were constructing the Rim Road, William Gladstone Steele wanted part of the Rim Drive to go to the lake shore. So you could drive your car to the lake shore, open up your car door, and touch the water. Again, the Park Service said no. Besides this lodge, William Gladstone Steele wanted to construct at least 3 more lodges so more people could visit Crater Lake. Again, the Park Service said no. He wanted a bridge to go out to Wizard Island so you could even drive your car to Wizard Island. Even a road to go to the summit of Wizard Island. You could park your car at the top. Again, the Park Service said no. So he was feeling more wounded as he got up in years, more serious, feeling like the Park Service and the general public was kind of forgetting about him here. He felt like he did so much to create Crater Lake National Park, protect it, research it, and promote it, and he was being forgotten about over time here. And here's a couple more pictures, just how sad he looked here as he was getting up in years. How many folks here are parents here today? Or even grandparents? Do you ever feel like sometimes your kids do not appreciate all the efforts that you did for them? That's kind of how William Gladstone Steele felt here too. And check out this last picture I have of William Gladstone, one of the last pictures taken of him. He was born in Ohio in 1854 and actually died around Medford, Oregon in 1934. And this is how he kind of described the last couple of years of his life. He said, quote, "My heart is full of sorrow of a forgotten old man, broken and condemned to solitude. For I look across my little valley and see strangers and friends passing in review, but they know me not, neither do they care." And so unfortunately he felt like he was forgotten about towards the end of his life. Well, in a moment, we're going to do what we can to correct this here today, because we're going to celebrate William Gladstone Steele with a toast here. So if anybody has glasses here, you might want to get your glasses here, your plastic water bottles, your beer bottles there, your paper cups, your fish buckets, your coffee mugs, your water bottles, anything you have here. Get ready here because we're going to do a toast here. Everyone ready here? So in conclusion, to William Gladstone Steele, who did so much throughout his life so we can enjoy this beautiful view from the back porch of the Crater Lake Lodge here today. Cheers. Cheers. Okay. Here you go. Let's do a cheers here. Okay. Who else gonna do cheers here? Cheers. Here you go. Let's hold this up. Here you go. Cheers. Anybody else? Cheers. Cheers. We'll catch some other folks on the end here too.
Can I throw this in the lake?
There you go. And just one moment here. Okay, cheers here. Okay. I know you've been hanging on that glass here faithfully too. One more. Let me get you here also. Well, I appreciate everyone coming here this afternoon. You guys have been a wonderful group here as I try to give you a kind of a history talk here on Crater Lake. I hope you enjoy the rest of your visit here too at Crater Lake. Thank you.